Hey everyone, and welcome back. We're diving into something today that I bet's on a lot of minds out there. With all the market craziness and inflation worries, how to protect your retirement savings. A listener sent us this super interesting article, How to Protect Your Gold IRA from Market Volatility and Inflation. So we're going to break that down together.
Yeah, it's definitely a timely topic, and the article really digs into gold IRAs as a potential strategy for keeping those retirement nest eggs safe.
For sure. And they even have stories from people like Jane and Tom and Susan who actually used gold IRAs to get through some rough financial times. We'll get to those later. But first, I think it's good to set the stage a little. A lot of us have heard about portfolio diversification. But, it's always good to revisit the basics, right?
Absolutely. For anyone who's maybe new to this, it's basically the idea of not putting all your eggs in one basket financially. So
Hmm.
instead of just relying on stocks and bonds in your traditional 401k or
Mm.
IRA,
Mm.
diversifying with assets like gold can potentially help reduce risk, especially during those market downturns.
And this article specifically talks about gold as a potential way to diversify. They point to how resilient it's been historically during economic instability.
Exactly, and it's actually fascinating to look back at how gold has performed
Yeah.
like during periods of high inflation,
Hmm.
like the 1970s in the US. While the stock market was struggling, gold actually did really well. It kind of provided a counterbalance to all the economic turmoil.
So, if inflation is eating away at what the dollar is worth, gold might hold its value better
Mm.
or even increase in value.
Yeah, that's the general idea. Of course, past performance isn't a guarantee of future results, but that historical context is definitely something to think about.
Okay, so let's say someone's intrigued by this idea. Using gold as a hedge against inflation and market ups and downs, how would they actually go about making it part of their retirement plan? Is that where the gold IRA comes in?
Exactly. A gold IRA, sometimes called a precious metals IRA, the type of retirement account that lets you hold actual physical gold and other precious metals as part of your retirement portfolio. It's a little different from a traditional IRA where you're mostly investing in stocks, bonds, and mutual funds.
So, with a gold IRA, you have more say in what assets are in your retirement plan. You're picking specific gold coins or bars instead of just a gold related stock or something.
That's right. And setting one up is pretty straightforward. You start by choosing a custodian, which is basically a financial institution that holds and protects your precious metals. Then you fund the account, either by rolling over funds from an existing IRA or 401k, or by putting in new money.
So, finding a reputable custodian is super important then.
Definitely. Think of it like choosing a bank. You want an institution with a solid track record, strong security measures, and transparent fees.
Makes sense. So once you've got your custodian and your accounts funded, then you get to the exciting part, picking out your gold investments.
Yeah, and there are some specific rules here. It's not just any gold that qualifies for a gold IRA. The IRS has specific requirements about how pure the gold has to be and the types of coins and bars that are allowed.
So you can't just melt down your old jewelry and call it a day.
Definitely not. There are specific gold bullion coins and bars that meet IRS standards. Things like American Eagles, Canadian Maple Leafs, and gold bars from well-known mints and refineries. Your custodian can walk you through the options.
Okay, so we've picked our gold investments. What's the last step in setting up the gold IRA?
Storage. The IRS says the gold in your IRA has to be kept in an IRS-approved depository. These are really secure facilities designed just for keeping precious metals safe.
No stashing those gold bars under the mattress then.
Haha, nope. That wouldn't fly with the IRS rules, and it's probably not the safest option anyway.
Okay, so we've covered the basics of what a gold IRA is and how to set one up. Let's dive into why someone might choose to do this. The article highlights some pretty compelling benefits. I have to admit, I'm curious to learn more.
Of course. And, the best way to understand those benefits is to see them in action. Remember Jane's story we mentioned?
Yeah, the retired teacher who was worried about her savings.
Exactly. Well, Jane decided to roll over part of her traditional IRA into a gold IRA. And it turned out to be a really smart move. When the economy went into recession and the stock market took a big dip, her gold holdings stayed pretty stable.
So it acted as a kind of cushion against those market swings, helping to protect her overall retirement savings.
Exactly. And that peace of mind was priceless for Jane, knowing that at least part of her nest egg was safe from the volatility.
That makes a lot of sense. And it goes back to that idea of diversification, spreading your risk across different types of assets.
Exactly. It's like having a balanced meal. You wouldn't want to just eat one type of food, right? You need different nutrients to stay healthy. Same idea applies to your retirement portfolio.
I like that analogy. So Jane's story shows how a gold IRA can potentially provide some security and stability, especially during uncertain economic times. But what about those other concerns? Like inflation eroding the value of your savings. Does gold play a role there too?
That's a great question. And that's where the historical performance of gold gets really interesting. Remember that period of high inflation in the 1970s we talked about?
Yeah, the one where gold thrived while the stock market struggled.
Exactly. During that time, gold's value actually went up faster than inflation. So while the dollar was losing buying power, people who held gold saw the value of their holdings increase, which helped them keep up with rising prices.
So it wasn't just about holding on to wealth, but potentially growing it during inflation.
That's right. And while past performance isn't a crystal ball, that historical link between gold and inflation is something many investors find appealing. It's like having built-in protection against inflation, chipping away at your hard-earned savings.
Okay, so we've talked about diversification, market volatility, inflation. It sounds like gold IRAs could potentially address a lot of the common worries people have about their retirement savings.
They can definitely be a helpful tool for those looking to protect and potentially grow their nest eggs. But, of course, like any investment, it's important to do your research and think about your own situation and risk tolerance.
Definitely. We're not financial advisors here, and this isn't financial advice.
Right. But the article does offer some great insights into how gold IRAs work and their potential benefits. It's a great place to start if you want to learn more.
And speaking of learning more, I know we've only scratched the surface here. There's so much more to unpack, especially when it comes to picking the right gold IRA provider and avoiding potential traps.
Definitely. We'll dig deeper into those aspects next time.
All right, so we've covered what gold IRAs are and why you might consider one. But now let's get down to brass tacks. How do you actually choose a good gold IRA provider? Because this whole world of precious metals can feel a little shady sometimes.
Yeah, I hear that. And the article does mention some potential risks and scams to watch out for. So let's talk about those and make sure our listener has what they need to make good choices.
Perfect. Because I think for a lot of people, investing in physical gold can be intimidating. It's not like buying stocks or bonds online. You've got custodians, depositories, IRS regulations. It can be overwhelming.
Absolutely. And that's why picking the right provider is so important. They're your partner in navigating this whole thing. A good gold IRA provider will walk you through everything, answer your questions honestly, and help you make choices that are right for your situation and how much risk you're comfortable with.
So where do we even start? What are some red flags to watch out for?
First of all, be wary of high-pressure sales tactics. If a provider is pushing limited-time offers or promising crazy returns, that's a big red flag. Remember, investing in precious metals is a long game, not a get-rich-quick scheme.
Right. It's like those late-night infomercials. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Exactly. A good provider will focus on educating you, not pressuring you. They'll be upfront about both the potential benefits and the risks of gold IRA.
So transparency is key. What else should we look for?
Definitely do your research on the provider's reputation. Look for companies with a solid track record in the industry, positive reviews from trusted sources, and a real commitment to customer service.
That makes sense. Word of mouth and online reviews can be really helpful to gauge a company's credibility.
Absolutely. And don't be afraid to ask for references
Yeah.
or talk to other investors who have used the provider.
Okay, so we're checking for transparency, reputation, and good customer service. What about fees? I imagine there are different costs involved in setting up and maintaining a gold IRA.
Yeah, you're right, there are. And it's really important to know what those fees are up front. A reputable provider will be transparent about how they charge, which might include setup fees, annual maintenance fees, storage fees, and transaction fees for buying and selling metals.
So we're comparing apples to apples between different providers, making sure there aren't any hidden costs in the fine print.
Exactly. And don't be shy about asking questions. A good provider will be happy to explain their fees in detail and help you understand how those fees impact your overall investment.
Speaking of questions, what about storage? We talked about how the IRS wants the gold in a gold IRA to be held in an approved depository, but are there different kinds of storage options?
That's a great question. And yes, there are a few variations. The most common way is to store the gold in secure vaults run by specialized depositories. These places are designed with lots of layers of security, like surveillance systems, alarms, and restricted access.
So like Fort Knox for your retirement savings?
Pretty much. These depositories are audited regularly to make sure they're following IRS rules and keeping things as secure as possible.
Okay, that sounds pretty reassuring. But what about insurance? Is the gold insured in case it's stolen or damaged?
Absolutely. Reputable depositories have insurance policies that cover the value of the gold in their vaults. So even if something crazy happens, like a break-in or a natural disaster, your investment is protected.
That's good to know. So to sum up, when we're choosing a gold IRA provider, we're looking for transparency, a good reputation, excellent customer service, clear fee structures, and safe insured storage.
You got it. Those are the key things to look for in a trustworthy gold IRA provider.
Okay, now I want to switch gears a little
Yeah.
and talk about something that comes up a lot with gold investments: liquidity. How easy is it to access your money if you need it?
That's a really important thing to think about, especially for retirement planning. Gold can be a good hedge against market volatility and inflation, but it's not as liquid as traditional assets like stocks or bonds.
So it's not something you'd want to use for short-term expenses.
Exactly. Selling gold takes a little time. You have
Yeah.
to work with your custodian, find a buyer,
Yeah.
and you might have to pay some transaction fees. It's not as simple as selling stocks online.
So it's more of a long-term investment strategy.
Exactly. It's about preserving wealth and potentially growing it over the years, not about making quick money or having easy access to cash.
Okay, that makes sense. Now let's go back to those real-life examples we mentioned. Remember Tom and Susan?
Of course, the retired couple who were worried about keeping up with inflation.
Great. Their story is a good example of how gold can perform during times of inflation. The article mentions that they decided to put some of their retirement savings into gold, and over time, they saw their gold holdings grow faster than inflation.
Exactly. While the dollar was losing buying power because of rising prices, their gold holdings acted as a kind of balance, helping them maintain their purchasing power and enjoy their retirement.
So their gold IRA gave them peace of mind and actual benefits in terms of protecting their financial security.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to think about the long-term effects of inflation when you're planning for retirement. Gold, with its history as an inflation hedge, can be a valuable part of that plan.
Now, I'm sure our listeners probably thinking, is a gold IRA right for me? It's a big decision with lots to consider. What advice would you give someone who's trying to decide if a gold IRA fits their goals?
The first thing is to learn as much as you can. Read about gold IRAs, the potential pros and cons, and the different providers out there. Resources like the article you shared are a great place to start.
Right. And remember, we're not financial advisors, so getting professional guidance is super important.
Absolutely. A qualified financial advisor can look at your overall finances, your retirement goals, and how much risk you're okay with, and they can help you figure out if a gold IRA makes sense for you.
Having that personalized advice can be so helpful when making such a big financial decision.
I agree. And remember, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. You don't have to put all your retirement savings into a gold IRA. It's about finding the right balance and diversification strategy for you.
Makes sense. And I think it's important to remember that investing in gold, whether through a gold IRA or something else, comes with its own risks.
Absolutely. The price of gold can go up and down, and there's no guarantee that it will go up in the future. It's important to understand those risks before you invest.
Right. And that's why doing your research, getting professional advice, and choosing a good provider are all so crucial.
Couldn't agree more. Knowledge is power, especially when it comes to money.
Well said. Now, I know our listener probably still has some questions. Luckily, the article we're looking at has a really helpful FAQ section that addresses some of the most common concerns. Let's take a look at those next time.
Sounds good. Let's tackle those FAQs and give our listener even more clarity and insights.
All right, let's get into these FAQs and see if we can answer any other questions our listener might have about gold IRAs. First up, is there like a minimum investment? I'm picturing those giant stacks of gold bars like in Fort Knox.
Uh-huh. Well, you don't need to be a millionaire to get started with a gold IRA. The minimum investment depends on the provider, but it's often more affordable than people think. Some custodians might have a minimum of like $5,000 to open an account, while others might have higher or lower limits. It's definitely worth checking with the specific provider you're interested in.
So shop around a bit to find a minimum that works for you. Now, what about people who already have a traditional IRA or 401k? Can they move that money into a gold IRA?
Absolutely. It's called a rollover, and it's a pretty common thing to do. You're basically moving funds from your existing retirement account into a gold IRA. The key is to work with a custodian who specializes in gold IRAs. They can help you through the process and make sure everything follows the IRS rules.
So you're not starting from zero. You're just adding gold into your existing retirement plan. That's good to know. Now, we've been talking a lot about gold, But are there other precious metals allowed in a gold IRA?
Yeah, you don't have to just stick with gold. Gold is the most popular choice. But you can also include other precious metals in a gold IRA, like silver, platinum, and palladium. What's allowed and the specific investments you can choose will depend on the provider and what you're hoping to achieve with your investments.
So you can build a whole precious metals portfolio within your IRA. That's cool. But here's something I've always wondered. Can you actually hold the gold? Like have those shiny bars or coins in your hand?
That's where things get a little tricky. Unfortunately, no. You can't take physical possession of the gold while it's in your IRA. The IRS rules say it has to be kept in an approved depository for as long as it's part of the IRA.
So it's more like owning a certificate than having a treasure chest.
Kinda, yeah. But the good news is you can get your hands on the physical gold once you retire and start taking distributions from your gold IRA.
Okay, so there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Speaking of distributions, what about taxes? Are withdrawals from a gold IRA taxed the same way as traditional IRAs?
Yes, the tax rules are generally the same. You usually pay taxes on distributions from a gold IRA as ordinary income, just like with traditional IRAs.
Mhm.
So definitely keep those potential taxes in mind when you're planning for retirement.
Right. It's all part of the big picture. Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today. We've talked about what gold IRAs are, how they work, the potential pros and cons, and even some real stories of how people have used them to protect their retirement savings.
We've also gone over some key things to think about when choosing a provider, those red flags to watch out for, and why it's important to get personalized advice from a financial expert.
Definitely. It's been a really interesting look into the world of gold IRAs. But as always, we encourage you to do your own research and really think about your own situation before making any investment decisions. A gold IRA might be a good option for some people, but it's not a magic solution for everyone.
Will said. It's all about finding the right strategies and tools that match your own financial goals and how much risk you're comfortable with.
And on that note, we'll leave you with this. As you think about your own retirement and the challenges that might come up, could a gold IRA be that extra layer of protection you need to overcome those obstacles and reach your financial goals?
It's definitely something to consider. Until next time, keep learning and remember, the journey to financial security is all about continuously learning and adapting.
Happy learning, everyone.